around him. And it's not that he was throwing fits and kicking over C-stands and, throwing boxes around or anything.
Ron Howard, America's favorite director.
When I was 8 or 9 years old, I dreamed of being a director. And so I'm living that dream, and it's wonderfully...
The red-headed kid from Mayberry who grew up to become one of Hollywood's most respected filmmakers.
She sees Chai, and maybe she just gets so Chai, and then it's just so emotional.
For over 5 decades, he's been the industry's nice guy, the steady hand who brings out the best in everyone. But behind that warm smile and collaborative reputation lies a different story. Because even the nicest guy in Hollywood has limits. Ron Howard doesn't yell. He doesn't throw tantrums or storm off sets. His leadership style is quiet, methodical, and built on mutual respect. He believes the best performances come from actors who show up with talent, humility, and professionalism, which is exactly why working with certain actors wasn't just challenging for him. It was, in his own diplomatic words, educational. From his early days on The Andy Griffith Show to major Hollywood blockbusters, Howard has crossed paths with performers who tested every ounce of his legendary patience. Some brought chaos to his carefully controlled sets. Others confused ego with artistry. A few simply couldn't match his professional standards. These weren't just creative differences. These were personality clashes that left lasting impressions on a man who rarely speaks ill of anyone. Silent resentments that influenced his casting choices for decades. Behind-the-scenes tensions that proved even Hollywood's most patient director has a breaking point. Tonight, we're revealing the 7 actors Ron Howard reportedly couldn't stand, the performers who pushed America's nicest director too far, the names that still make him choose his words carefully in interviews, and the stories that show why sometimes, even in Hollywood, nice guys don't always finish last. Let's get into it. Number 7, Shelley Long. Ron Howard believes in balance. As a director, he's collaborative to the core, an orchestrator who builds harmony on set.
First and foremost, and to this day, if you get him up in front of an audience, he's pretty entertaining.
His productions are known for calm focus and mutual respect. Actors trust him because he listens, adapts, and creates spaces where everyone can thrive. But in 1982, that philosophy was tested by an actress who couldn't let go of control. Night Shift was Ron's big break as a studio director, a quirky comedy about morgue workers starring Henry Winkler and Michael Keaton. Howard, barely in his 20s, needed everything to run smoothly. Enter Shelley Long, fresh off early television success, but not yet the household name she'd become on Cheers. On paper, Long seemed perfect for the role. Smart, expressive, capable of charm with an edge, but almost immediately friction surfaced. Multiple crew members later described her behavior as controlling and overly calculated. Unlike Keaton, whose improvisational style energized the set, Long wanted structure and precision for every single take. Industry sources say Howard found himself constantly managing Long's demands. She questioned blocking, challenged rewrites, and turned every scene into a negotiation over tone and character motivation. In a 2006 interview, Howard spoke diplomatically about difficult collaborations. Some actors come to set with their mind made up, and there's no room for discovery. That's challenging when you're trying to find something magical in the moment. The tension peaked during a crucial scene where Long reportedly held up production for hours, insisting on multiple script changes. One crew member recalled Howard's quiet frustration. Ron never lost his temper, but you could see him calculating how to work around her rather than with her. Long, for her part, saw herself as a committed professional, bringing integrity to the role. In a 1995 interview, she defended her approach. "I come prepared. I always do." Some directors mistake questions for challenges. To her, Howard's laid-back style felt unserious, unprofessional. The lesson was clear. Ron Howard valued collaboration over control, and Shelley Long represented everything he didn't want on his sets going forward. Number 6, Tom Sizemore. Ron Howard doesn't rule through fear. His leadership style is methodical, focused, built on preparation and mutual respect.
He was an entertainer first. He was a monologuist, and he was a singer, and he never was really stand-up comedian per se. He was a humorist.
He believes great performances come from actors who show up not just with talent, but with discipline and control. Which is why working with Tom Sizemore wasn't just challenging. It was, in Howard's words, a lesson in containment. In 1996, Howard was directing Ransom, a high-stakes thriller starring Mel Gibson and Rene Russo. The film had all the ingredients for success: A-list cast, studio backing, and Howard's steady direction. Then Tom Sizemore arrived to play one of the antagonists. On paper, he was perfect. Gritty, intense, commanding. Behind the scenes, his presence was volcanic. Sizemore was already building a reputation for being as unpredictable off-screen as he was magnetic on it. Drugs, alcohol, and erratic behavior followed him like shadows. Industry sources say he would arrive late, disoriented, sometimes requiring multiple retakes, not because he missed lines, but because his energy was completely off the rails. Howard, known for running smooth, family-like productions, found himself managing chaos he hadn't invited. In a rare moment of candor during a 2004 interview, he addressed the Ransom experience. "There were days I had to recalibrate everything around one person's unpredictability. That's not how I like to work. It disrupts trust and throws off the entire rhythm." The breaking point came during a pivotal scene where Sizemore's behavior became so erratic that Howard had to halt production entirely. Crew members described watching Howard's famous patience finally crack, not in anger, but in quiet determination to maintain control of his set. When Sizemore passed away in 2023, Howard issued no statement, no tribute. Sometimes professional forgiveness has its limits. Number 5, Andy Griffith. Ron Howard's Hollywood legacy is built on gentleness and respect.
I don't know if he ever studied acting anywhere or not, but he really built his own sense, his own aesthetic.
He doesn't throw tantrums or burn bridges, but beneath his reputation as one of Hollywood's nicest guys lies a more complicated reality. One forged in the shadows of Mayberry, where the man who played America's most beloved sheriff wasn't always so fatherly when the camera stopped rolling. When 6-year-old Ron Howard first stepped onto the Andy Griffith Show set, he was wide-eyed and eager to please. Playing Opie Taylor, the sheriff's son, he was America's red-headed sweetheart. Andy Griffith, then in his prime, seemed like the perfect mentor, taking young Ron under his wing and treating him like family. "Andy made me feel like I belonged," Howard said in a 1982 interview. "He never treated me like a prop. He treated me like a partner." But as Howard matured, so did his awareness of Griffith's more complicated personality. The show's warm surface masked a cooler reality behind the scenes. By the later seasons, Griffith's demeanor began shifting dramatically. Cast members noticed the changes. Scripts got tighter, tension thickened, and Griffith became moody, withdrawn, and at times surprisingly sharp with the cast and crew. Multiple biographies describe Griffith as controlling and easily irritated, especially as the pressures of leading the show mounted. Frances Bavier, who played Aunt Bee, openly disliked him. Don Knotts adored him but feared his unpredictable temper. And Ron Howard learned to read the room carefully. Industry sources say the breaking point came during the show's final seasons when Howard, now a teenager, began asking more questions about his character and the show's direction. Griffith reportedly didn't appreciate the challenges to his authority, even from his fictional son. "You learn early how to navigate dominant personalities," Howard said in a 1999 interview. "Especially when someone can turn on charm for a take, then shut it down completely between scenes." The subtext was unmistakable. After the Andy Griffith Show ended, Howard and Griffith rarely spoke. They didn't collaborate, didn't appear at events together, and maintained only the most professional of relationships. When Griffith passed away in 2012, Howard's tribute was carefully worded and notably brief. The experience taught Howard valuable lessons about creating consistency on his own sets, ensuring that the warmth audiences saw on screen actually existed behind the cameras as well. Number 4, Russell Crowe. Ron Howard is the kind of director who brings calm authority to every set.
He was really the rock on which the show was built in every way.
His productions are disciplined, comfortable, and built on mutual respect. His patience is legendary, which is exactly why Russell Crowe's intensity during A Beautiful Mind left such a lasting impression on him. When the two collaborated in 2001, it seemed like Oscar destiny. Howard's steady direction paired with Crowe's electric screen presence. The film would indeed win Best Picture, but the process was a storm Howard never forgot. Crowe's performance as brilliant mathematician John Nash remains critically acclaimed, but behind the scenes, Howard battled an entirely different kind of genius. Insiders describe Crowe arriving on set every day like he was preparing for war, not against his co-stars, but against the filmmaking process itself. He challenged rewrites, questioned camera placement, and turned every directorial note into a philosophical debate. Every detail became a negotiation, every scene a battle of wills. Russell was brilliant, but he made everything more complicated than necessary. One assistant director later recalled, Ron had to constantly manage his intensity just to maintain the film's rhythm. Howard, maintaining his professional demeanor, later told The Hollywood Reporter, "With some actors, you guide the scene. With Russell, you hold on tight and hope for the best." The tension wasn't about ego or temperament, it was about process. Crowe saw Howard's collaborative style as potentially compromising the artistic integrity he demanded. In a 2004 interview, Crowe defended his approach without backing down. "I don't show up to be liked. I show up to find truth in every moment. If that creates friction, so be it." Asked specifically about working with Howard, Crowe offered what could generously be called faint praise. "Ron's a thoughtful director, but sometimes I think he wants everything too clean and comfortable. Real art isn't comfortable." Despite the film's massive success and Oscar wins, Howard never worked with Crowe again in a leading role. Not in his subsequent blockbusters, not even in cameos. When asked in 2015 about potential future collaborations, Howard's response was diplomatically final. "Some partnerships are meant to be once-in-a-lifetime experiences. The collaboration produced a masterpiece, but at a personal cost that Howard clearly decided was too high to pay twice." Number 3, Henry Winkler. In the golden glow of 1970s nostalgia, Happy Days painted a perfect picture of classic Americana.
The entire time that I was under contract and doing Happy Days, my dream was to be a filmmaker.
But behind the warm sitcom smiles, industry insiders whispered about hidden tensions between Ron Howard, the show's clean-cut lead, and Henry Winkler, the breakout star who unexpectedly stole the spotlight. When Happy Days debuted in 1974, Ron Howard was the obvious centerpiece. America's boy next door, fresh from his success as Opie on The Andy Griffith Show. But audiences quickly fell in love with Winkler's Arthur Fonzarelli, the leather-jacketed rebel who was supposed to be a supporting character. As Fonzie's popularity exploded, Howard's role began shrinking in comparison. The show, originally built around Richie Cunningham, gradually transformed into The Fonzie Show in everything but name. Scripts were rewritten to highlight Winkler's character, promotional materials featured him prominently, and network executives clearly saw who was driving ratings. Industry insiders reported visible frustration from Howard during this period. Ron felt like he was becoming a supporting player on a show that was supposed to center on him. One source from the Happy Days set reportedly observed, "The irony was bitter. The wholesome hero was being overshadowed by the rebel." Howard never publicly expressed deep resentment, but he hasn't entirely denied the professional awkwardness either. In a 2023 interview, he reflected carefully, "When a character becomes as iconic as Fonzie did, it changes the entire dynamic. There were definitely adjustments that had to be made." In a rare candid moment during the 1990s, Howard admitted, "There were times I questioned my place on the show. I didn't resent Henry personally, but I absolutely resented how the narrative shifted around me." The experience taught Howard valuable lessons about the unpredictable nature of audience connection and how quickly show business dynamics can shift. Lessons he'd carry into his directing career. Number 2, Mel Gibson. By the early 2000s, Ron Howard had established himself as Hollywood's most reliable director.
Nerve-wracking component to it because I had directed Mel Gibson a few years earlier We all know Mel can be a little reckless, and he's his own man.
Steady, professional, capable of handling massive productions with grace. So when he was offered the chance to direct Mel Gibson in Ransom, it seemed like a perfect match. Two consummate professionals creating a high-stakes thriller. Instead, it became a masterclass in managing volatile personalities. Gibson in 1996 was at the peak of his leading man powers. Braveheart had just won him Oscars for both acting and directing. He was Hollywood royalty, commanding enormous respect and equally enormous creative control. But Howard quickly discovered that Gibson's intensity, so magnetic on screen, could be overwhelming behind the cameras. Industry sources describe Gibson as demanding extensive script changes, questioning directorial choices, and essentially trying to co-direct the film from his starring role. Unlike Howard's usual collaborative process, working with Gibson became a constant negotiation over every creative decision. Mel had very strong opinions about everything, one crew member later recalled. Camera angles, other actors' performances, even catering choices. Ron spent more time managing Mel's input than actually directing the movie. The tension peaked during a crucial kidnapping scene where Gibson reportedly stopped filming multiple times to suggest alternative approaches. Howard, known for maintaining calm authority, found his patient leadership style constantly challenged by Gibson's overwhelming presence. Howard later described the experience diplomatically. Some actors bring so much passion to their roles that it spills over into every aspect of production. That can be energizing, but it can also be exhausting. The experience reinforced Howard's preference for actors who trusted his vision rather than trying to reshape it. Number 1, Marlon Brando. In 1995, Ron Howard was offered what seemed like the opportunity of a lifetime, directing Marlon Brando in a prestige drama.
I've always felt that that's another thing that I really took away from the show, was a sense that, hey, it was, it could be a lot of fun.
Brando, the legendary method actor, the man who had revolutionized American cinema with performances in A Streetcar Named Desire and The Godfather. For any director, it would have been a career-defining moment. For Ron Howard, it became a nightmare that convinced him some legends are better admired from a distance. The project was a biographical drama where Brando would play an aging patriarch struggling with family legacy. On paper, it was perfect Oscar material. In reality, it became an exercise in managing one of Hollywood's most notoriously difficult personalities during the twilight of his career. Industry insiders say Brando arrived on set completely unprepared, refusing to memorize lines and demanding that his dialogue be written on cue cards positioned around the set. But the real problem wasn't his unconventional methods. It was his complete disrespect for everyone else's time and professionalism. Brando would disappear for hours without explanation, show up late for crucial scenes, and demand massive script changes on the spot. Howard, accustomed to collaborative but disciplined productions, found himself essentially held hostage by an actor who seemed to view the entire filmmaking process as beneath his attention. Marlon treated the set like his personal playground, one crew member later recalled. He'd decide mid-scene that he wanted to explore a completely different character motivation, and everyone else just had to wait while he figured it out. The breaking point came during what should have been a simple dialogue scene. Brando stopped filming repeatedly, demanded rewrites, then disappeared entirely for 3 hours. When he returned, he announced he'd reconceptualized the entire character and wanted to start the scene from scratch. Howard, maintaining his professional composure, tried to accommodate Brando's process while keeping the production on schedule. But privately, sources say he was furious at the disrespect shown to the cast and crew. The project was eventually abandoned after weeks of chaotic production. Howard never spoke publicly about the specific reasons, but industry insiders understood. Even Hollywood's most patient director had limits, and Marlon Brando had crossed them all. Years later, when asked about working with legendary actors, Howard's response was telling. Some legends earned their reputation through their work. Others earned it through their behavior. It's important to know the difference. From Marlon Brando's legendary unprofessionalism to Mel Gibson's overwhelming intensity, from Russell Crowe's artistic volatility to the competitive tensions with Henry Winkler, and even the painful lessons learned from his television father, Andy Griffith. Ron Howard's journey through Hollywood hasn't always been smooth. Behind his reputation as America's nicest director lies a more complex truth. Even the most patient leaders have breaking points. These experiences shaped Howard into the director he became, someone who values collaboration over chaos, preparation over improvisation, and mutual respect above all else. His hatred, if we can call it that, was never personal. It was professional, a commitment to creating environments where everyone could do their best work. What surprised you most about these behind-the-scenes tensions? Do you think Howard was too demanding, or were these actors simply unprofessional? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more revealing stories about Hollywood's hidden dramas and the price of perfection in the entertainment industry.